So welcome to the Firestone Williams Report for Wednesday, March 20th. It is the first day of spring, but I have to tell you, Scott, it doesn't look much like spring.
It's not spring.
Okay, what is it?
I don't know what it is.
Okay.
It's I feel like I live inside a Star Wars movie right now or something. It's, you know.
Well, you're a Star Wars fan.
Well, I am a bit, yeah, sure. I just expect a tauntaun to go rolling through my backyard. Just
all right.
Hopping through. You know,
okay.
So that's for all the geeks out there.
They'll know who Tauntaun is.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I understand Lucas has sold his Star Wars empire to the evil empire called Disney.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So what happens now?
I don't know. Did Michael Eisner do that thing where he's threatened to crush his neck with his powers?
I think Michael has moved on there, Scott. You're dating yourself.
I am, maybe.
Mr.
Okay.
40-year-old.
Yeah.
No, it's Iger now. He's in charge, and he
Right.
did the deal to bring the Star Wars empire, I guess, into the Disney empire, and they're going to do 3 more movies.
And wasn't it like the payment was equal to America's total debt or something? Like
yeah, I think that's right. Yeah,
the
George Lucas is going to be looking for work now, though. Now that he sold Star Wars, I mean,
Well, how's he going to pay his rent?
Yeah, I don't know. He's going to be in tough. Now, I understand you had some tech problems this week with your Google Calendar. Do you want to tell us about that?
You know what? It was just one of those simple things in that it was more frustrating than anything.
Mm-hmm.
The usual trying to get something to integrate with another piece of software that doesn't like what you're trying to integrate with, and jumping through hoops with Google, and downloading new software and trying to get configured. But it's done.
But we can't live these days without our cloud-based services. And I use Google Calendar for a lot. We dump a lot of information into Google Calendar. So if we're going to do say the Firestone Williams report, we know who's on, who our guests are, and what we're doing that day, and other people can share it and see it. So I mean, it's really important.
It's outside. It's interesting because when this happened, it once again made me realize how dependent on technology I am.
Yeah.
It's it wasn't just setting up
Horrible.
one device with one
Nope.
syncing calendar. It was everything from email programs to calendars to multiple laptops,
Yeah.
multiple mobile devices, my iPhone, my iPad, my
iPad Mini.
Like it was just it was absolutely ridiculous.
Are you going to buy the new iPhone watch when it comes out?
No.
I think I might.
Really?
Having an iPhone watch, and I can then, so I hope I can just talk to it, say answer the friggin' phone or call Scott.
Yeah, but here's the thing: is that the only way that you can, I guess, have a private conversation is you had the headphones in.
I have no idea. I
think they should go with the iShoe and go back to the days of Get Smart, where it's like everybody takes their shoe off. I think that would be.
I think our 2 guests today are too young to know who Get Smart is. Luc Richard from Dual Code. Do you want to introduce yourself to our listeners today?
Yes, my name is Luc Richard. I'm the founder of Dual Code, and with Dual Code basically is an online training company. And what we do is we provide online training services to large organizations, whether they're hospitals, nonprofit organizations, private companies. We help them set up learning management systems, video conferencing systems, as well as online training to train their staff and members.
Now, just before we went on the air, so to speak, I was asking you as a prof. I've been a prof at Carleton University, then at the University of Ottawa. Are you going to put me out of business?
No, that's actually a fear that a lot of our clients have actually when we approach them initially. But no, definitely not. Actually, I usually don't present our solution as an online training solution. I present it as a blended learning approach.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Because our best programs out there today is actually a combination of the online training portion as well as a classroom portion, especially for certain tasks that require hands-on stuff like firefighting or other activities.
You've been a volunteer firefighter, I think, Luc.
That's right. I'm a volunteer firefighter with the City of Ottawa, and definitely that's one type of training program that is very well suited.
Hard to put out a fire using your iPad, right? You actually have to go out and do stuff.
Is there no app for that?
There has to be. Pour water on this building, please. I don't think that's going to work.
No,
I mean,
exactly.
There's still things you have to get out there and do yourself.
Exactly, yeah. With any course out there, there's a combination of theory as well as hands-on. So the online training portion is better suited for the theory. There's definitely simulation games and scenarios.
Yeah, simulations for sure. Yeah.
But definitely we can't replace the hands-on approach.
But there's still some things you feel, and I'm sure the fire department would feel that you just have to do it, right?
Absolutely, yeah. As a volunteer firefighter, you're required to take about 120 hours of courses, basically. and probably half of it is actually sitting in a classroom and listening to somebody read PowerPoints. And that's the portion that we can actually take online and make it more interactive and personalized as well. Because whenever you have a classroom of 30 to 50 students, obviously you can't personalize your approach for everybody. Versus when it's online, they get to answer questions and play with the course basically, and based on their answers, their feedback, you can actually personalize their learning experience.
Did you see the film Flight? Denzel Washington.
Yeah, I think
Denzel Washington is flying a plane. He is hungover, and I think he's had some substances other than alcohol in his system. But there's a crisis on board, and this plane falls out of the sky from about 30,000 or 40,000 feet. It's got about 120 passengers on it, and there's about 10 minutes of film where they are trying to figure out what's happened. They're talking to ground control to try and get some help. He brings in a check pilot who's actually a stewardess, and there are three of them in the cockpit, the pilot, the co-pilot, and the stewardess in the jump seat, trying to figure out what's gone on with the plane. And it turns out, I think, their elevator has got stuck, so they put the plane into a downward dive. So he decides to turn the plane over, fly it upside down, which will then bring it level flight. And I think that incident is based on the book by Thomas Homer Dixon, a University of Toronto professor who wrote The Ingenuity Gap. And in the first 10 pages he describes a similar situation where a plane lost its rudder, so it had no yaw control. And if you have no yaw control, you cannot land a plane. It just kind of does this. It spins one way or the other way kind of randomly. But the three pilots in that case, the two pilots and the check pilot, were able to kind of roughly land the plane or line it up and then land the plane in a controlled crash landing. Most of the people survived. But afterwards, they went into a simulator. The FAA went in there, and the National Traffic Safety Board went into a simulator and tried to simulate that, Luke, to see if they could replicate that. And in 2,000 attempts, not one of them could land it. So you could simulate stuff online, you can practice online, but I'm not sure that you can actually do everything you need to do online. And that's why, I mean, look, maybe I'm an old-timer here. I still think there's some value getting students smart students into a room with a good quality prof, and there's something to be said for, the real thing.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, there's a lot, like I was saying earlier, for the hands-on stuff, etc. Being out in the field and doing the actual real thing is definitely not something that can be replaced online. Although the simulation scenarios and games do help get you there, though, however. But especially when it comes to emergency situations like you were just describing, definitely something doesn't...
Yeah, I get that. So we're not going to put Bruce Firestone out to pasture yet. Now, Aydin, can you introduce yourself to our listeners and tell us more about Fluid Surveys and Review Room?
Sure, yeah. So my name is Aydin Mirzaee, and I'm co-CEO of a company called Fluidware, and Fluidware makes two products. One is Fluid Surveys, which is an online survey tool. And then our other product is called Review Room, and Review Room is what we call an online application management system. So what it's really used for is for accepting applications online and allowing people to review those applications. We use
it for the Bootstrap Awards.
Yes, that's true. You use it for the Bootstrap Awards.
Explorium runs every year the Bootstrap Awards. We give out, in fact, we're giving out one tomorrow. We had, at least I think we have the mayor coming tomorrow to hand out 3 awards for the fastest growing bootstrap startup. But they all started from using your product, Review Room.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, my fiance won one of your awards.
No way.
She was the Amanda May Lingerie.
Oh, lingerie, that'll win every year.
Yeah, that's true. I told her that you participate your first year you won. We participated 2 years and won second place both times.
Oh, that's
so
too bad.
So she totally beat me in that.
So she actually has one of those golden boots.
She has the boots.
Isn't that nice?
So that's kind of
What's she going to do with it?
She has it on display at the store, actually.
No way.
Yeah.
Well, tell us more about the store. Let everybody know.
Sure. So it's on 203 Dalhousie Street. It's
a great location.
Yeah, it's a pretty good. I mean, in Ottawa, Dalhousie Street is known for its shopping. So it's a lingerie boutique, and what they're focused on is getting people into the right fit. Apparently 9 out of 10 women wear the wrong bra size.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, so that's a fact.
I've heard
not that I would know too much about it, but this is what I hear. And she's there to give people not just, I guess, good lingerie, but also lingerie that fits you properly.
Yeah, she's a curator.
Exactly.
I understand that. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So does she have a website?
She does have a website, so it's just
tell us that.
AmandaMay.ca.
Okay, AmandaMay.ca. But let's talk about Review Room and Fluid Surveys.
Sure, yeah, let's do that.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of Review Room, so we're kind of in the online education space in the sense that a lot of our customers for Review Room are educational institutes.
We use it for West Nickel.
Yes, that's true.
The West Nickel Business Plan Competition is a national competition, and we were one of your first clients, I think.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, the West Nickel competition, which is actually, I guess the finals are coming up in the next week or two. Is I would say the largest business plan competition in Canada.
Yeah, I think so.
They're at 17 different colleges and universities.
Yeah.
So they use us to accept applications, people submitting business plans, and those being reviewed. And from that perspective, the online education portion comes from the feedback that the reviewers and judges give back to the students so that they can improve their plans and go on from there. But one interesting point that you brought up, and it's just a concept of, are people afraid of this sort of thing going online? In the scholarship or grant space or fellowship space, when students apply to get those awards, one of the things that obviously happens is there's always a committee of reviewers that get together and they deliberate and they figure out who should get the awards. And so whenever we approach an organization to talk about Review Room and how they can take this whole process online, that's one of the things that they bring up. People or judges like to meet with each other and talk about things, and they're skeptical as to whether an online system can actually take that same deliberation process and put it online properly.
And can it?
So what we say is something very similar to, I guess, what Luc says, which is it's something on top of that to facilitate it. So what happens is you get most of the issues and comments and feedbacks and scores done ahead of time, and then when you go into the room to deliberate, you know what you have there, and you can talk about potential issues. But other than that, most of the discussion has been already done, and you can focus on the more important portion. So it makes the discussions more efficient.
I think that's true. Now that I think about it, my wife is the executive director of the Nutrition Foundation, and I think they're a client of yours.
Yes, absolutely.
That's a national foundation that my wife has the unhappy job to go across Canada and give out money to people. Right, that's what she does. The Nutrition Foundation gives out $15,000 early stage grants to young artists across Canada and $25,000 cash grants to mid-career artists, and that's an extremely important amount of money to most of these people because the average Canadian artist makes $22,000 a year. So $15,000 or $25,000 can make a big difference in the lives of these people. And it's tax-free. And I think that they use it exactly the way you say, Aydin. They use it to have all the people across Canada submit, the judges do review it, but then they do a conference call where they then sum it up.
Yeah, and the Nutrition Foundation is actually really interesting because obviously this is awards in the arts, and so there's music, dance, ballet.
Yes.
And
visual art.
Right, and acting, and so basically what happens is
cool.
the students literally upload HD videos of themselves in performances, so there will be someone acting and singing and dancing.
Yeah, it's really cool.
And then the judges from all around Canada just take a look at this stuff online, and then I guess they don't need to meet in person, but then they do the conference call.
They do the conference call.
Whereas
so
before,
it is exactly what you said. It's additive.
So how do you feel as far as the I'll say the uptake on this? Because it's obviously with something like this, as we were discussing, people are more apt to want to sit in a room, chat about things. Have you found that from a user adoption perspective, I can only think, with the advent of social media and how that's been adopted and how people are so used to communicating online, have you seen that affect your business in a way in that they sort of equate that type of scenario with their everyday kind of computer usage in online life?
Yeah, so I think it's usually different types of organizations approach things differently. I mean, even now on Google when they do their, I guess, annual report or quarterly reportings, it's done on a Google Hangout. So more and more,
that's right.
As these big companies push something, then it starts to become a trend, and I think in most cases, what people are looking for is other organizations like them that are doing something. And if it's okay for other people, then it's okay for them too, or then they can convince their constituents. It's always finding those early adopters that are willing to try something out.
But you're past that early adopter stage now. I think I was talking to your partner Ellie, and he was telling me that you're into the 7-figure revenue numbers.
Yeah. I mean, things are going well, right? But the market is so huge that you can still think that we're in some ways early stage, because there's so much potential. It's just basically any university or college or educational institute in the world could theoretically use our product, and in many different ways.
And all the not-for-profits and and charities out there.
Yeah, I mean, so it's vast, right? So the number of things that one can address is just really vast, and I think just the online platform to get everything into one central repository. I still do think there is value in meeting face-to-face, obviously just from a networking standpoint. A lot of times if you're a volunteer for an organization and you want to be a judge or an evaluator, one of the advantages to those guys is obviously they're helping out, but they meet other people like them. So I think there's still a lot of value to that face-to-face meeting. I just think that these online tools make it a lot more efficient.
So let's talk about the other part of Chided, CHIDE.IT.
So Bruce, we just changed our name to Fluidware.
Yeah, I saw that coming, but I mean, when I looked it up, it's still Chided on on the internet, right?
Yeah.
So Fluidware.
Yeah. So actually, a lesson there for anyone looking
rebranding.
For the rebranding. Yeah. Make sure to get the .com before you do the rebranding. It's not that you can't get it afterwards, it just becomes very expensive. So we're going through that process right now.
Scott, do you know something about branding and rebranding?
Nothing.
Yeah. Scott runs Ivero, and one of the great Ottawa companies, and he's too modest, but I'll speak for him in terms of that. But one of the things I tell all my student entrepreneurs, Aydin, is you get the .ca, you get the .com, and you get your Twitter handle.
Yes.
Right? As a minimum, the Twitter handle is free. The .ca and .com, if you just buy it from a registrar, the two together probably $20 a year.
Right.
So it's not a big investment, but it's a huge investment if you don't.
Right. Yeah, it becomes very expensive, especially if you've been around for a long time and someone can go onto your website and check out your client list and say, well, it must be worth at least so and so to these guys. One of
my former students has put himself through university, has opened a second-hand or a used car. I guess they don't call it used cars anymore. Previously owned car, very successful dealership, all based on domain name speculation.
Yes.
That's all he did. He's a really smart young man, and he's done really, really well. So I don't know what you're going to pay for. Is it Fluidware? Is that, I get it right?
Fluidware.com.
Yeah. You haven't bought that yet?
We've actually made the purchase. It's in the final stages of transfer.
Can you tell us how much you paid for it?
Just under $12,000.
Yeah, as opposed to maybe $6 or something like that on
GoDaddy. Here's an interesting one though. That's
a great lesson. I'm glad you shared that.
This is years ago, but it's this is when people first started buying domain names.
Yep.
And I knew a guy that actually did a preemptive strike. He found out, this is back when AOL Time Warner merged, and he went and bought AOLTimeWarner.com. And he had it, it was registered, and they took it away from him.
Yeah. He was a domain name squatter.
It was like, no, sorry, you bought this, but it doesn't matter. This is owned by this company, even if they haven't purchased it yet. And they, and it was an and he, at the time, I mean, he didn't have the resources to hire a lawyer to say, well, no, I've purchased this, and this is my domain, and you owe me for it. But it was interesting to see.
There's a great story here in Ottawa. Rob Hall from Internic. And Momentous. Rob bought Internic, .ca back in the early stages of the great .ca domain name kind of land rush. And so the Department of Commerce, which is a scary bunch based out of Washington, D.C., came along and said, you can't have Internic.ca. We own the name Internic.com, and we have a claim to Internic.ca. Well, Rob's not afraid of litigation, and he's not afraid of the DOC, although most people would be, including yours truly. And he said, well, guess what? I have a corporation named Internic.ca Corporation. I have trademarked the name, and I own the .ca, and I trade in domain names, so I'm not a squatter. I'm not a domain name squatter. Sue me. And the DOC did, because they don't care either. They're probably a bunch of lawyers anyway. And he won. He faced them down. And Internic.ca is still owned by momentous and very successful company. So I think that is a great lesson that you shared, Aydin, with our listeners today. To, and you probably want to get your vanity URL on Facebook as well.
Yeah. So we have everything now. It's
all right.
That's why the old site is still there. We didn't put on this one because we were just waiting for the transfer to happen.
All right. So tell us about Fluidware.
So
and the survey side of the business.
Yeah. So the other, I guess, product that we have is Fluid Surveys, and again, in the education side, it's pretty huge. So basically what it is this online tool that you can go into and create surveys, distribute them, collect results, analyze the results. In the education space, it's used in a number of ways. We actually work with the government of Australia. This was an interesting project.
Yeah, I think I remember that.
Yeah, they were basically trying to figure out what students and what teachers thought about, I guess, different points of the education system all across basically the country. And so what they wanted to do was implement the survey that would go out to students, but the most important part of it was the benchmarking aspect of it. So what they did was they took the scores from the way the students rated different things, and the principals were allowed to compare that to other I guess organizations, and so that way they created this benchmark system. So from the perspective of performance management, or from the perspective of comparing results to others, the whole online format makes a lot of sense. And other use cases include just quizzes, training quizzes. So if you take a course, are you going to take a quiz afterwards? And you can build those quizzes and forums through Fluid Surveys.
Now, do you use this outside of the educational world at all?
Oh yeah, so there's a lot of use cases. I think the most common use case is just for customer satisfaction. That's right. The biggest one. I think since we started seriously using Fluid Surveys within our own company to improve our customer satisfaction, it's made huge differences. And I can give you tons of really great examples around that. Another space that's really interesting is, because at the end of the day, a survey is just a form, it's also about data collection. So one of the things that we notice is that there's a lot of cool use cases where the customers will put a survey onto their iPad devices. So we have this offline version, doesn't need an internet connection. You can take pictures and obviously put that as part of the form. You can collect signatures. So some of the cool use cases is we work with an organization in town that goes to Africa and implements educational programs in Africa. And one of the things that they do is they take these tablet devices, and they're basically recording attendance and just different factors on the ground. And so they collect all this stuff. It's throughout the Africa region, and then they collate the data and bring it back. So lots of different use cases, but at the end of the day, what it's really about is just smart data collection and then analyzing that data.
But aren't you in two different businesses? I mean, Review Room and Fluid Surveys. I mean, isn't that, I don't know, cars and suits?
Yeah, so it's interesting, right? So I think if I were to recommend to anyone as a startup, whether they should have two products or not, it's probably not a good idea unless you have the staff to...
How many people are on the staff now?
So we're about 40 people.
40 people for Ottawa. That's a big company.
Yeah. Well, I mean we
if
have a long way to go.
Yeah, but that's a big number. You can do a lot of damage with 40 people.
Yeah, and so I think we're at a stage now where we can really do the whole two product thing. We have dedicated staff for each one, and but at the end of the day, both products it gives us a really good idea of how to execute, because the survey space is obviously super crowded. And then the review room space it's a new space, and so we're educating people and explaining to them what this product is and what it does and why they should use it. So in one case we're convincing
Right.
people to use us over others. In another case, we're convincing people to use a new product in this category. So I think that sort of experience gives us a lot of ability to, I guess, innovate on both fronts and use experience from one and the other, and for future product introductions.
So here's my question for you, is that, and I mean, I hate to use this term because I hate to use buzzwords in any way, shape, or form, but we now live in a world of quote-unquote big data, right? And we hear that all the time as far as companies are always looking at, there's so many different multiple facets, and I know that even from our perspective, from a Marcom company, is that because we manage the marketing for so many large companies, we are continually measuring back all the time against all these different facets, and it has to be integrated into CRMs. We're constantly trying to profile those kind of things. How do you see your offerings from that perspective? Like, does it integrate into other sort of corporate IT scenarios like CRMs and the like? Do you see a lot of companies utilizing that data to affect other sides of their business?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we integrate with a lot of different tools. So now everyone's going into the cloud, and you kind of know what tools people use. So in order to fit into that ecosystem, you have to basically have the proper integration. So Salesforce is a big one. So the great thing about Salesforce is, apparently not many people know this, but they have a non-profit foundation that basically gives out free licenses to Salesforce. So usually when you talk about Salesforce, everyone says, well, it's too expensive, but they actually give out free accounts, I think up to 10 free accounts, and they have some great pricing, and so even nonprofits are starting to adopt that. And
That is so cool. I'm glad you told me that, because I did not know that.
Yeah.
We run exploring.org, and we'll be looking at that tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. And so
this afternoon.
Okay, this afternoon.
I mean, it's a great tool. Everyone knows it. Everyone uses it. And so we made sure that both Fluid Surveys and Review Room are integrated with Salesforce, because at the end of the day...
Can we take a survey, though, and embed it in a WordPress site? I mean, probably can, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just
That's
a matter
trivial.
of 2 clicks.
Yeah.
But so here's the cool thing about it, right? So let's say that you're surveying, your members, and later on, obviously you don't want to have to go log into Fluid Surveys to check the results. The next time you pull up my profile in Salesforce, you can just see what my answers were to that question, right?
That
so
is
that's
awesome.
super helpful. It's everything in your CRM, and we're just a mechanism to make that happen.
So here's one of the things I'd like to talk about, because this is interesting, because we keep hearing the term cloud all the time.
We do.
And everybody sitting in this room, it's right back to the conversation that we had at the beginning of the, just with my cloud experience this week again with Google and the like. The whole situation with cloud, and I'd like your opinion on this, is that, as I said, I mean, we have companies that we manage the marketing for, and they span a wide range of company types. I know from the IT perspective, when people are talking about cloud services, there's still this great amount of fear behind moving corporate data to the cloud. Like, it's, oh my God, we can't, security issues, there's all these things. Then on the flip side, you have things like Salesforce, that the same company that says, well, we don't want to move to the cloud, will use Salesforce. They'll use, they could use anything from that to Constant Contact to SurveyMonkey to, and even things as you mentioned, right? It's like, just getting your domain, your Facebook vanities, Twitter, all those kind of things. Those are all cloud services. How do you kind of see this? Because it's the, and let's not forget, obviously, the personal aspects as well, right? Everybody has a Facebook account. Everybody has, probably a Hotmail account, a Gmail account. That's all cloud service as well. Do you see any, I guess, conflict within companies that look for your services where there is that, we'll say, trepidation between, well, is it cloud? Is it on, from a secure perspective, is it cloud on a non-secure perspective? Like, how do they bridge that divide, I guess?
I think it's even worse than that, Scott, because as you know, Google and other companies from time to time announce that they're not supporting one of their existing products, right? We've seen Google Reader. We're not going to support that anymore. And everybody, including yours truly, is now concerned, what if Facebook said, well, we're just going to go out of business tomorrow, and you happen to have 1,000, personal photos on there, or your company has a Facebook page with another 1,000 photos that are important to you, and really the only place that they probably exist now might be in the cloud, on Facebook servers. So, I mean, I want to address that question. I mean, I think that's a good question that Scott's raised.
Sure. Yeah. So I think what happens is it depends on what type of organization is talking to you. Once you deal with Fortune 500s, they don't just come and sign up for your service.
No, they don't.
They don't even accept your terms of use. They'll come in and say, here's our terms of use, and you can use this.
Do you have some Fortune 500 clients?
Yeah. We have quite a few, and I guess there's a tactic to get there too, right? So the other thing is, when you're trying to sell to these organizations, it's not about going in and trying to get them organization-wide. You always want to start with a small user that's
right.
beneath the threshold of the buying manager, because then they don't have to go to IT. IT's role, I found, is to stop us from doing whatever we're doing. So we'd like to get to IT, no problem, we'll talk to them, but once user adoption is already there and we have a lot of champions within the organization.
Let's ask Luc the same question, to bring the conversation, you into the conversation, Luc. I mean, how many organizations say, gee, I'm not sure if I can trust a cloud-based service?
Yeah, actually most technology companies at some point or another actually stop supporting their product, either because they don't make it and therefore the product is discontinued, or they do such a good job that they get acquired by a larger company,
right,
who at that point just basically wants to acquire them for their client base, or in some cases their product, but then they merge the initial product into theirs. So to eliminate that step when we go to sell our services, basically, is what we've done is we leverage a lot of open source software out there.
Right.
So we can actually tell our clients, well, the software you're actually using is not dependent on dual code survival, basically.
Right.
We leverage other LMSs like Moodle, for example, has got a community of over 1 million developers, basically.
Wow.
So even if dual code were to go away tomorrow, our software would still be in existence, basically. And in our terms and conditions with every client that we have, is they are allowed to take back their data anytime they want, basically.
I mean, it goes back to the question that I faced in 1994, in the early days of the internet age, at least the public internet age, and the university I worked for at the time came to me and said, you're going to have to put up a password protected space for your course descriptions, and because I believe in the MIT philosophy, which is information wants to be free, and so my course description, course notes, everything was in the public domain, and I was okay with that, but the university was not. So I had to build a password protected space, and that was a bit of an ordeal back in '94. Today it'd be frankly trivial, but so I did that, and then a year later, when the university wasn't looking, I took it down. And a few years after that, the course that they were particularly concerned about, which was design economics for engineers and architects, became noted as an exemplary course. It was adopted across Canada as a model. And I don't think that could happen unless you're out there in the public domain. So the question is, protecting your IP, putting paywalls up. I see the Washington Post has decided just recently to join the New York Times, and hundreds of others, even the Ottawa Citizen, the Ottawa Sun, are doing it with paywalls. I mean, how do you guys feel about the move, which I think is retrograde in my opinion, but maybe I'm a minority opinion?
No, I tend to agree. I mean, if you look at economics in general, basically, there's so much competition out there that there's always competition on price as well.
Right.
And because you can, whenever it comes to digital products, because you can distribute your products online, the cost of distribution is essentially zero.
Almost, yeah.
So sooner or later, the information will get out there. So if you try to protect it too much yourself,
so that I mean, it comes into question then, if I'm a prof, if I took some of my intellectual property, I created a course, I could create a course, I'm sure, in financial literacy, creditor proofing, real estate made simple, design economics. I mean, I could go on. I've taught a lot of different things over the years, product management. If I were to do that and charge a certain amount for a course, where would I end up? Because following that logic, universities will go out of business. Luc.
Yeah, good question. I think what the educational institutions, and anybody is into the online training space right now, not just academic institutions,
right,
but organizations, nonprofit, etc. They do sell most of their courses at this point. But they are also trying to find alternative ways to actually earn money.
Well, the Canadian Virtual University, I read today, has 12 accredited universities that belong, including Carleton University, which I was actually surprised to hear. They have 100,000 students, and they offer 2,000 online degrees. 2,000. That's a lot. If if the ultimate price for information online via the internet or mobile space is going to be zero, the Canadian Virtual University, university professors, and the actual classroom experience will go extinct. So what are we going to do?
It's a big challenge right now, and it's actually a hard one to answer. A lot of people are trying to find different ways to actually generate revenue from a different business model at this point in time.
Well, let's look at it this way. I mean, you mentioned newspapers, magazines, right? We've all heard this ridiculous story of, well, the print industry is dead. There's, nobody's buying magazines anymore, nobody's buying newspapers. But then again, going back to even, what we're discussing as far as the big data scenario, right, is that can be used for, we'll say, good and evil at the same time. Say, for instance, all of us today were to sign up for a magazine online that embraced the concept of data and profiling information and looking at that from a business model perspective, right? So we all start a magazine, we have people subscribe, and we profile people immediately as they subscribe. Realistically, what I get in my magazine online and what you get are completely different.
Right.
What that also means, and I've worked in the magazine business, is that if you're looking at physical printed materials, the only way that magazines make money is through ad revenue. So realistically, you have a finite amount of space to put ads. If you have a business model that is, that you've thought about and you've created something that an online experience, so it's, I'm reading a magazine on my iPad, well, realistically, depending on what I'm interested in, I'm getting those ads. What you guys are interested in, you're getting those ads. So from a business model perspective, suddenly, oh, well, this magazine has an infinite amount of advertising that they can sell. They can also sell the value proposition that, well, your ads are going to very specifically targeted people.
Yeah, let me stop you though for a minute, Scott, because I know where you're going and I like it, but one of the things that I look at, I know the Canadian university model pretty well. You've got tuition fees that are capped by the province of Ontario, if you're in Ontario. You've got a limited amount of opportunity to create sponsorship, because some universities, many universities, are really uncomfortable with the idea of sponsorship or advertising, if you will. I mean, the University of Ottawa, where I've been entrepreneur in residence, entrepreneurship ambassador, we'll sell the name of a building, the Paul Demray building. We'll sell the name of the school, the Telfer School of Management. And that brings in tens of millions of dollars. That's important. But there's also a little bit of, are you selling your soul? And there's a real concern about that you enter into these commercial relationships. It's no different than a high school bringing in vending machines from a big soda company and making kids fat. Where does it stop? So I'm not sure if the model is going to work exactly the way you're outlining.
But here's the thing: is that let's step away from the advertising model, but look at the profiling model. Realistically, and I'm assuming from an online education perspective, and I'll just speak to this as like from a personal side of things, and go high school, university, those kind of things. I learn differently than my friends do. They learn differently than our friends do. Everyone absorbs information in a different way. There's, from a same perspective of being able to personally profile materials, can you not in the future foresee something that, yes, everybody gets to go to university, they're paying for their courses, they're going online to take part in those courses, but everyone gets a different learning experience based on their psychology.
I get that. I buy that, and there may be a premium there, but I think Luc's point is a very strong point. I think the ultimate price for internet delivered goods and services, will be zero.
But here's the thing too, and I have to ask you this, right? Because I had a conversation with the IT group of a major university here in Canada. And one of the things that they were looking at is there's no such thing as computers owned by the school anymore sitting in the school. Computer labs are going the way of the dodo, all those kind of things. Because you can virtualize desktops, you can virtualize all these scenarios in which people need, even if you're talking about, you need like really high-end computers to run whatever that may be in certain science programs, those kind of things. That type of scenario is run from a server side. People can now log on, and what they're trying to do, because it reduced costs, it reduced overhead, is that everyone now, whatever device you have, right? It's like if you're a Mac person, great. If you're PC person, great. You want Linux, whatever, doesn't matter. You can access this information. How do you see that from an educational perspective? Like, do you see that the big push, even from a cloud perspective, is more the concept of being device agnostic, in that now that people can access things via the web, they're not so, we'll say, reliant on certain operating system software, that type of configuration?
Yeah, that's definitely, they're definitely going in this direction, but another thing people are also willing to pay for in some cases is the experience as well. If you look at the TED conferences, for example, those are being distributed online today, or you can get them on Netflix or some other apps for free.
Mm-hmm.
Yet if you actually want to attend a TED conference, it's in the hundreds, and I believe it's over $1,000, and they are sold out every year, basically.
Wow.
So although the information itself, the knowledge itself, is actually delivered free of charge over the internet, people are still willing to pay quite a substantial fee to actually attend the real
South by
conference.
Southwest in Austin, Texas is similar, you know. I mean, you can certainly see a lot of the information coming out of the conference, but the experience is quite different.
Exactly, and that's one of the things that people are actually willing to pay for, the
Mm-hmm.
experience. In some cases, the papers that come along with a formal education program versus finding the information online. I mean,
Mhm.
certainly you can find a lot of the information online, but sometimes it doesn't hold the same weight as if you have some kind of a formal paper at the end of the day from a recognized educational institution.
How many people work at Dual Code?
We have about a dozen if you include a few contractors.
So you have 12, and again, you can do a lot of damage with 12 people, right? 12 people.
Yeah, definitely. Even 12 doesn't seem enough. I think we're certainly not a 40 people company, but even with 40, there are some days where you'd
I have no doubt. So I mean, to my way of thinking, though, you're in the right space. I mean, the online education, it's only going to get bigger. Whatever the model will be, we don't really know what it will be in 5 years. We may not know what it is in 2 years, but it's only going to get bigger.
Yeah, definitely. There's some experts out there that are saying that online training is going to be bigger than emails, basically, and there's no limit to what people can learn online.
So what do you offer at Dual Code? How do you compete with some of the big the big guns in your industry?
Yeah, one of the different approaches that we do is we try to leverage a lot of open source material.
Right.
So that certainly as a single company, if you try to do everything yourself, you're kind of tying yourself to whatever your company can actually produce.
Right.
By leveraging open source software like Moodle as an example, we have a community of over 1 million developers
yeah.
behind us that help us. There's also a lot more integration work that can take place. Basically, whenever our customers ask us if we can do this or that, chances are they're not the first customer who's asked that question, and somebody else out there has done it. And by the software being open source, we can actually leverage what everyone else has done.
And how do you get a customer? I mean, how do you get a client? I mean, how do they find out about you?
A lot of us find us online, but we actually do a lot of work through RFPs, basically. Most of our clients are rather large, hospitals, universities,
right.
large nonprofits. So typically we leverage RFPs, and RFPs is actually a good way as well, because we know at that point they are ready for online training.
Absolutely.
In a lot of cases we have to convince them that online training is the way to go, versus if they produce an RFP, we know they're ready for it.
And do you have any American clients?
We do have a few American clients, yes.
Where's the growth for Dual Code going to come from?
We're seeing a lot of traction actually in the nonprofit sector, especially with organizations dealing with volunteers.
Well, Bluesfest, how many volunteers do they have at Bluesfest?
Bluesfest receives about 6,000 applications, and they have over 3,000 volunteers every summer.
That's a big number to coordinate.
And
do they use, can I ask, do they use Dual Code?
We've been talking to Bluesfest at this point.
So we can expect an announcement any day.
I can't say that right now, but yeah, one of the challenges they face is they have to train about 3,000 people in a matter of about 2-3 weeks, because everybody typically applies at the last minute.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of challenges there. So.
Isn't that exciting? Well, there's just no limit to it. Now, as we started out this conversation today, you're a volunteer firefighter. What's the toughest fire you've ever had to fight?
Oh, there's been some good ones. We've actually had one just about 2 days ago in Manotick. You may have
I heard of that. Yeah. What happened? Can you tell us?
We're not sure exactly where the fire started or anything, and it's not something we could disclose anyway. You can't really speculate on that information.
Right. So what do you have to do?
Everybody's assigned to a specific task. So whenever you show up at the scene, it depends what you're assigned for. You could, in some cases, you could just work traffic circulation. In some cases, you can be what's called a RIT team, which is there to make sure other firefighters don't get in trouble, and if they do, you go and rescue them. In some cases, you'll work the hose line and actually put out the fire.
Have you done all of those things?
Pretty much, yeah. Whenever you show up at a scene, basically command assigns you to some very specific tasks, and over the course of a few years, you do end up playing all the different parts.
And did you do some online training?
I did some online training, and we're actually in the process of, Dual Code as a company, we're in the process of developing online training for firefighters, which are being used by quite a few fire chiefs around the province. And the beauty of it is not that it just simplifies. When it comes to volunteer firefighters, it's very hard to find volunteers that can actually volunteer during the day. They call them daytimers, and they're hard to find because most volunteers actually have a job 8 to 4, Monday to Friday, basically.
Right.
So to find those daytimers typically means that these people work evenings and weekends. So trying to coordinate a training schedule, face-to-face training schedule for volunteers
Very
is
tough.
next to impossible.
Yeah.
And this is where the online training really helps these organizations.
Well, the Distress Center here in Ottawa has, I think, over 200 volunteers, and you know, they do a really extensive training. I mean, is that kind of company that you could help?
Exactly. Yeah, we actually have a program for victim services that. It's basically, as of recently, it's been approved by the ministry across the province, so it's going to be rolled out to all victim service providers across.
Was that hard to get?
Yeah, it's been basically going on for about 2 years.
Yeah, with government, nothing's less than 2 years.
Exactly.
I mean, you want to say hello? Yeah, I'll take 2 years.
Their original program required volunteers to spend over 60 hours in a classroom.
I know that, yeah.
And we reduced that to about 16 hours of online training, and then you can spend a weekend in a classroom. For team building approaches, hands-on activities, that kind of stuff. So
big
that's
difference.
A big improvement.
So have you gone into a burning building yourself and pulled somebody out?
I haven't pulled anybody out, no, thankfully.
Yeah.
Hopefully by, you know, it's always great to hear nobody's in the house or the building, whatever.
Yeah, that's scary. I mean, fire is scary. Well, tell the audience a little bit more about Luc the person now.
Luc the person. My background is actually, I used to be a school teacher.
Yeah.
About 15 years ago. Was actually a little bit frustrated with the technology being used in the classroom, and I actually left the, very safe job basically to join the.
Were you a married person at the time?
I wasn't a married person at the time.
All right, because sometimes the wife might say, "Gee, Luc, what are you doing?"
Exactly. I was fortunate enough. And I joined the high-tech boom basically in the early to late 90s, you know, when everybody in Ottawa, every high-tech company was just looking to hire people.
Right.
And that's where I got my technical background basically. And with time, I spent about 10, 12 years with technology companies. And when we sold our last company, I wasn't an owner, but I was one of the original employees of that company.
Right.
When we sold it, I was
Which
looking
one
for
was
the
it?
next thing, Atrius Systems.
Right, I remember that.
Sold out to Sonus Networks. We were actually just
not far from where we are now, in the Lee Valley Tools building.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And after we sold that company, I was looking for something that would leverage my past experience. And combining the educational background as a school teacher and the technical background, and with the boom of online training, I thought was just the perfect
Wow, what a great insight. Now, did somebody give you a $3 million check to start Dual Code?
No, I am truly what you would call a bootstrap company, basically.
Yeah, I know that. And was it a scary decision to start it?
It was definitely, you know, you always like to think that you can do a great job, but there's always doubt, definitely.
Yeah.
But it was a bit scary, but at the same time, it was a good opportunity to actually go out there and have fun doing it.
So how did you finance it? I mean, since somebody, you know, a VC didn't step up or a group of angels didn't step up and give you $3 million, what did you do?
I went out and found clients right away, basically. From day one, I found some clients, and I started out as a one-person company, did most of the work myself. And with that money, I was able to leverage it and hire more people and find
That's an amazing story.
That seems to be the common thread.
Yeah.
You know,
well, I think you know, Scott. I wrote something for Tim Review, and I did a little bit of original research. And between 2005 and 2010, just under 91% of all tech companies started in the United States between 2005 and 2010 were bootstrapped. About 8% were angel finance and 0.3% were VC finance. So if it's over 90,
zero bank finance?
I don't know if there were much bank finance, but probably not a lot. But if it's about 91% bootstrapped in the United States, it's probably higher in Canada. So you're in good company there, Luc. Now, Aydin, how did you guys start? It's been 5 years now. Did somebody give you a $3 million check?
No, we didn't raise money either. I think it was basically the same approach as Luc.
Right.
I think actually it's interesting because I think the way that we got our first contract was from Carleton. And
was it West Nickel?
it was actually, so you know Luc
Yeah,
Lalonde,
yeah, I know
obviously,
Luc
right?
well,
So,
yeah.
he had that program with Tony Belletti, what was it called now? But essentially
Lead to Win.
Before
Lead to Win, I can help you.
Yes. No.
ICHU.
No, it was
Oh my
something
God.
within Carleton.
This is
It
skill
was,
testing.
I can't believe I usually know the name, but it was essentially him
Okay.
giving out money to students that
Right.
had business plans to help them
Okay.
go ahead and do that. And so he basically gave us $10,000 to go out and build a system where students can apply online, and then his reviewers could.
So not really a whole lot different than Luc.
No, exactly. And so we took that contract, and the reason was we thought we could one day make it into a product. And so we said, all right, well, we can apply this to every other business plan competition, and it'll be great. Except what we realized was that it would actually take a lot more time than to take some custom code and make it work and make it a product. And so that's how Fluid Surveys was born.
Right.
When we built that for Luc, there was a form component that he could create his own forms. We said, well, it's going to take us forever to make Reviewroom its own product, but can we do something with the form component and make that a product first? And so that's how. It was really funny. So our original concept from the beginning was to do Reviewroom, and we were running out of money. Basically, it was whatever savings I had from my Nortel days, which wasn't very much. And so once that was nearing the end, we said, okay, let's make Fluid Surveys into a product, and we used Fluid Surveys to bootstrap Reviewroom. So Fluid Surveys just happened to take off, and so once it had enough money, then we could hire dedicated people for Reviewroom. So what a great story. Now tell us more about Aydin the person. You're getting married, I guess? Yes. You're engaged? Yes, that's true. I am. Yeah, I mean. Basically, I mean, I grew up in the United States. I came to Ottawa when I was about 17. Went to U of O. My first job was at Nortel. Right. I did a startup while I was at Nortel. You're an engineer, right? Yeah. So I studied electrical and microwave engineering, and highly relevant to Fluid Surveys. Yeah, very. And so no, my first job at Nortel was software because the economy was on a downturn, and so. The advice that I got from people who were older than I was if you get a job that's in any way, shape, or form related to engineering, just take it. So I took the job at Nortel even though I had no software experience. Did a startup on a nights and weekends basis while I was there. Had that fail, and what I realized is that you just can't do startups on a part-time basis. Isn't that interesting? Do you agree with that, Scott?
Well, it's funny because everything that I'm hearing from you guys. This is kind of a funny scenario. There's a group of us in town. We're all CEOs and owners of companies, and we call ourselves the First World Problems Club. Okay, that's just because now it's like it's funny because we get together and actually we make fun of each other for complaining about the woes of having a successful company. Right, it's First World Problem, which hence the name. But we actually had a conversation. We just had a lunch on Friday, and a whole bunch of us were sitting around the table talking about how the companies got started, and it was exactly that. It was that. You've got to be, it's 24/7. None of us had any financing, no help, no nothing. It was all, okay, I got a credit card and a dream. We're going to, make this happen. And well, I say that to a lot of the student entrepreneurs I mentor, coach, that you can either be on shore in a safe, secure job, working for high school or university or government of Canada, whatever, or you could be in a rowboat on the stormy ocean as an entrepreneur trying to get to the other side. But you can't be both. You can't have one foot on shore and one foot in the boat. Aydin, your experience is repeated a million times over. Yeah. Is there anything you regret about that voyage? It was really interesting that I kept going because the interesting thing about having one foot on each side is you really put it into perspective. My job at Nortel was easy. I could finish everything I needed to do in like 3 hours, and somehow I was still performing so well that I kept getting raises and promotions and all this stuff. And then yet this entrepreneur thing was so difficult, and I kept trying and it kept not working. And it was stressful, and it required more work for less results. Isn't it interesting too? Because that's one of the comments that came up on Friday. Is that like, not to insult you guys, but realistically, there's a certain level of crazy right? I
Yeah.
mean, in every entrepreneur that I know, it's
Well,
like
all the 4 people sitting around this table, certifiable.
Because I mean, especially in a city like Ottawa, where you talk about, everybody
Right.
has their comfy government job. They're,
Yeah.
everybody talks about, well, at least it's, it's my retirement, it's this, and it's like, and then there's the people like us that go, no, I don't want that safety net. I'm going to go and run in the exact opposite direction. And there's a certain amount of crazy, I think, that goes along with being an entrepreneur. But when it pays off, it's,
Well,
it's well worth it.
I like what I've heard from Paul Valet at Pythian. He said startups is the best business in the world, because a lot of the startups, probably all of the ones that I'm looking at here, yours, Aydin, Luc, yours, Scott, probably started with $10,000. He said, where else? Paul said, where else can you go? Place a bet for $10,000. If it works, it's worth millions, and if it doesn't, you've lost 10 grand. So where else could you go?
I think I started mine for like under 1,000.
Okay, well, there you go.
Was that bad?
Same logic.
Yeah.
Same logic.
Yeah.
And I think he's right. I mean, Paul came to the University of Ottawa to give a lecture, and usually when somebody gives a guest lecture, I'll find 2 or 3 things that they'll say in an hour that I probably don't agree with. Well, I just kept nodding, yes, yes, yes. I mean, Pythian's one of the great companies in Ottawa, and I've got a lot of respect for what Paul has done there. But, he's so right. But try and explain that, Scott, to somebody who has a comfortable job. The fact you came out of high school, was it high school you were teaching?
Yes.
High school environment, Luc. I came out of the Government of Canada years ago. I had a JOB there for 3 years and did not like it. I mean, try to explain to somebody that you could do that. It's hard to explain that.
Mm-hmm. And on top of that as well, I mean, I know myself, a lot of my friends that own companies tell me it's not even about the money in a lot of ways, right? It's as we refer to it, it's the thrill of the kill in a way. It's that you're hunting something down and you actually are able to achieve that goal, and that, to me, is the addictive part. It's the constantly setting those new goals and seeing them constantly come to fruition. And then, as you said, right, you get into say a corporate or government scenario where things move at the speed of dark as opposed to the speed of light, where you can't affect change immediately. That becomes very frustrating, I think, for people that have that entrepreneurial mindset, where it's as you said, right, you're getting most of your work done in a couple hours a day, and you're like, my God, this is easy. Why am I here?
So it's interesting, but I will say though that I don't know if you guys would agree, but I would never do another bootstrap startup. It was tough. I mean, I love talking about it, and I can tell you the
I
stories,
agree with that.
but I will not do it again.
I tell my student entrepreneurs, build and hold. Don't flip it.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Now, we're coming to the end, and I want to thank you guys again, my co-host here, Scott Williams, Aydin, Luc, for coming today. I'm going to ask you each a question. I hope you can keep your answer to about 30 seconds. Luc, in the next year, where's Dual Code going?
Dual Code's had a huge launch with learntohelp.com. We're going to be, a lot of our clients are comparing us to LinkedIn for the volunteer sector.
Wow.
I'm hoping there's going to be a lot of potential over there. So.
Wow, I'm hoping so too. Aydin.
I guess in the next year what we're going to focus on is taking our software products that are currently tools and releasing solutions that are going to be higher value to a certain segment of our target market.
Well, I want to wish you all the best. Thank you again for coming here today. It's been just terrific. Thank you again, Scott. And that's it for the Firestone Williams Report, Wednesday, March 20th.